Okay, so I'm just going to show you today how to make a stay wet palette for acrylic painting. I think this is a very necessary step at the beginning of learning how to paint with acrylics. I learned it myself just when I started with acrylics, and I think it's a great thing to be able to do because number one, a stay wet palette, its main function is to keep your acrylic paint wet throughout the day while you're working. And even in the way that I'll show you how to make it, you can keep your paint wet overnight. And there are several advantages to that, in that obviously you don't want your paint drying out, as it will in about 20 minutes if you don't use a stay wet palette. Acrylic is notoriously fast drying, and if you were to put it onto a wooden palette or a plastic surface like the one you see here, number one, on varnished wooden surfaces or on plastic surfaces, the paint will actually bead because it's water based, and number two, it will dry out within about, as I said, about 15 to 20 minutes. So that proves wasteful and inconvenient. So a stay wet palette will keep the paint wet throughout the day while you're working, and even overnight, as I said. So what we're going to need for this is two plastic trays, or two trays indeed. Like these ones, you can see that these ones are slightly broken at the edges, so they're not perfect, but they'll do for the demonstration. I use these ones myself all the time, so they actually are effective enough. And the trays should be able to sit on top of one another like this, so that so that one can be used as a lid to make the whole thing airtight. I'll show you why later on. There should be no handholds on either end of the tray. Like very often with trays you'll have handholds, so you should have no handholds. So it should be a completely airtight seal when you put one on top of the other, like so. These two are perfect for our purposes. The other things that you'll need are kitchen towel. Kitchen towel is very absorbent and can absorb a lot of water, and that's why I use kitchen towel. You can also use toilet paper, but it's not as good for absorbing water. So I recommend using the kitchen towel. Greaseproof paper, as you can see written on the box. Now, it's really important that that's etched into your mind, because if you were to get baking parchment, which is very often right beside greaseproof paper in the supermarket or wherever you're buying it, baking parchment tends to ball and break, so it won't work for these purposes. So it's specifically greaseproof paper that you'll need. And the other thing you'll need is just, a container of water like this. So just to begin, what we need to do is take the tray that will actually act as the palette, and take two squares of kitchen towel and just lay them down end to end like this, and then take two more squares and just lay them over on the sides, just so I'm covering all of the base of the tray. And then take the water and just pour some into the middle and let it soak out to the edges. So let it move as far as it's going to move. You don't have to wait all day at the same time. Just help it along by adding little bits. Just make sure that there's no puddling. You just want it to all absorb into the towel. So you're making a wet bed at the bottom of the palette. So that's perfect, because that's the entire bottom of the tray covered in wet kitchen towel. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of the greaseproof paper. This one is brown, so it resembles baking parchment even more, but this is actually greaseproof paper. Usually greaseproof paper comes in a sort of greyish or whitish, almost transparent colour. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take the greaseproof paper it's got a shinier side and a less shiny side. I'm going to put the shiny side up and then just cover the entire palette like that, and just pat it down onto the surface, smoothing it down onto the wet kitchen towel underneath. And then I'll just tuck in or fold in the edges like this. And that is basically that. This is my Stay Wet palette, ready to go. The other tray, you can put your paints directly onto this surface and they won't be overly wet, but as they try to dry during the day, what they'll do is they'll leach water up through the greaseproof paper and have enough water to stay wet. So they'll sit on that surface and we'll just get it. They'll basically drink enough water through the surface, as much as they need to stay wet during the day. And this is specifically for acrylic paints. This is not for any other type of painting, not for oils nor watercolors or gouache. And this tray here will act as the lid. So as I said, this lets in a little bit of air because the crack here, or the broken piece, the missing piece there, but it does its job well enough. I just sit it on top like that. So when you've got paint remaining on the surface at the end of your painting session and you don't want to throw it out or let it dry, you just cover over the top of the palette with the other one, with the other tray. And then I tend to sit bottles of paint on top just to make sure that it's extra tight, just keeping it extra airtight. And that basically is that.